Hey everyone, I am Charlotte and welcome to Unstripped Part 2, Debunking the Art Journey. It's a 10-day series where we will be diving into how I got into digital art to where I am today. That sounded way too podcast, but I think this is a podcast of sorts. But anyways, if you see the piece on screen, I wanted to take the time to acknowledge that this was my first piece on the iPad. So in the previous video, I mentioned how I got into digital art with just my phone, and I used to draw with my fingers, and then I shifted to drawing with a stylus on my phone, and then I shifted to the iPad. And so this one was seriously bad because I was still figuring out Procreate and I was still figuring out what to do with the brushes, and I practically copied all the artist's brushes that I knew and wanted to make a decent-ish piece. And this piece was born as a result of that. And that's too obvious because I wasn't very comfortable with the pencil brush or the round brush, but I pushed through anyways and did it. In almost a sheer irony, I had a phase where I shifted to another coloring brush, but then I shifted back to the round brush, which was something I never expected. And today you see my art, most of the rendering and coloring is done using the round brush. So that's just completely ironic. But coming back to this piece in itself, I didn't know how to use the reference option in Procreate, and so you can see me struggling to add layers, and so I add the reference picture as one layer. Honestly, this piece is not half bad, and it was the first time I attempted rendering, and it was the first piece ever. So it would be harsh to say that it was a bad piece, but at the same time it's not that good. And as you can visibly see, there's no sense of original style. And that's the thing. Although you envision something in your mind completely different from what your skill set is, that period of gap is required because you are not just learning how to put your mental thought into a proper vision that is tangible, but at the same time you're also learning various things that aid to that, right? And it was a hard lesson that I had to learn through the course of my digital art journey. And for almost, I think, a year and a half, I did not like any of my pieces because my goal was to create visual stories, to create this sort of balance between writing and drawing where I'm able to share stories and draw at the same time. And I was severely lacking, and it tore me apart to a greater extent until I realized that progress comes only when you're consistent. There's no hard and fast rule to it, is an important lesson that I learned. But at the same time, unless you're having fun with your piece, you won't be able to get to your desired result. And honestly, at the point where I created this piece, I was really happy, and that's all that mattered at the end of the day. So the previous piece was done in 2022, and this piece was done in March 2024, which is more than just a year at the time when I'm recording this. And to be quite honest, I see the difference of my art style from last year to now even more drastically. But I chose this piece to contrast it with the previous first digital art piece because I think the aesthetics of it in terms of her attire are similar, attire and hair, and you can see the improvement. And this is over a span of 2.5 years. Almost, yes, 2.5 years, right? And although I'm still unsure of where to place the colors, the rendering is a bit jaggy if you see over the course of this process video, you learn to appreciate it more. And I remember the time when I posted this piece, right? I was content with how my style was getting. Because although I didn't fully yet understand proportions and things like stylization, where basically you're trying to understand your own sense of style when it comes to drawing, the key fundamentals of things like lighting, where the shadows are coming, where the sunlight is hitting, those things were things I was intentional about when I looked at the reference. And those things were important to also understand my own sense of art style, because I knew the fundamentals at this point to a good degree. And so it was comfortable to implement that, and hence a slow sense of my style came. But anyways, I'm running out of time, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye!